Howdy, and welcome back to Communiwhat Wednesday podcast. I am your host, Dr. Dana Martin, and we're going to talk about communication. Specifically, we're going to talk about communication. I'm going to pop this up. What is this? This is our poll results from last week. Last week, we talked about something that shows up in difficult conversations all the time, and that was, what are you protecting, right? Are you protecting your credibility, your relationship, your comfort, your defensiveness for your need to be right? And I wanted to build on that this week, because once we feel like something is at risk, something else tends to happen really quickly. We start filling in the blanks. We start making assumptions. And sometimes before the other person has even finished communicating, we've already decided what they meant. So the question I put out for the poll was, when communication breaks down, which assumption are you most likely to make first? The results were pretty interesting and spread more than I thought they would be, which is awesome. Uh, 20% said, I know what they meant. That's the assumption. 40% said, well, hold on. Another 20% says, let's go this route. They should already understand. Nope, sorry. I can't read my own chart. Let's try that again. 20% said, I know what they meant. 20% said, their tone tells me everything. 20% said they're doing it intentionally. That's a whole nother thing. But 40% said they should already understand. So they should already understand at 40% was our clear winner. So I read that and I thought, wow, what does that mean, really? At least when it comes to the Communiwhat framework, right? What what does that mean? Context. That's almost a perfect example of what happens when we forget that the person on the other side of the conversation does not have access to everything happening inside of our head. We know the history. We know what happened yesterday, and we know what our leaders handed down. We know what maybe changes, and of course, we know what we meant. Because we know it, then we start believing that they should know it too, but they don't. And then something dangerous begins to occur. We stop responding to what we actually know, and we start responding to the story that we created. That's what I want to talk about today. What story are you telling yourself? So, as humans, throughout our entire history in and of itself, before things were written, things were passed down through storytelling. Human beings are really good at making sense of incomplete information. And sometimes this is helpful, right? Sometimes, though, it gets us into a little bit of trouble. Think how quickly this happens or escalates, right? You send someone an email, no response. An hour goes by, then 2 hours. Then it's the end of the day. And what starts happening? Maybe they're busy. Maybe they're in meetings. Maybe they haven't seen it yet. Maybe they saw but got distracted and forgot and haven't come back to it. But our brain is perfectly willing to help fill in the blanks. And what starts to happen sometimes? Maybe the thoughts occur in our head, they're ignoring me, or they don't think this is important. They always do this. Now notice what has started to happen in this. Nothing changed about the email. All we did was add silence in a lot of it. Once I start believing the story that I'm telling myself, communication will change. The follow-up email will change. Just following up again, you know the email. Nobody has ever said again either. Like sometimes it's capitalized. And we capitalize it because, you know, they were feeling a little agitated, or maybe you were. And now the other person opens that thinking, what just happened? Because they were in meetings all day. They hadn't seen the email. And very quickly, we just went from communication and connection to assumptions and filling in the gaps, and a very negatively influenced communication. So here's one of the biggest problems that we see with assumptions, and they rarely feel like assumptions once we believe in them. They start feeling like facts. Listen, folks, this one today is not an easy one. Okay. This is not an easy one. And this happens to every single leader, every single employee, every person at some point in their day or week. This occurs. Assumptions. Those assumptions, though, begin to feel like facts. They did not respond to my email. They ignored my email. The first is an observation. The second, an interpretation. But once I believe the interpretation, I start believing it like it's fact. That distinction matters a ton because if I respond to an observation, I might ask, hey, did you get a chance to see what I sent? If I respond to my interpretation, I might say, I really need you to stop ignoring my emails. And those are two very different conversations. Same event, different story, different outcome. So let's start with that poll winner. 40% of you said assumptions are most likely, the assumptions we're most likely to make is that they should already understand. I think this is one of the easiest traps for us as leaders to fall into because the longer we are around something, the more obvious it becomes to us. That's one of the, I don't want to say problems with growth mindset, but as you grow and whatever trajectory of growth you're on, if everyone around you is not growing at all or barely compared to your growth trajectory, it starts to mess with your head a little bit because you can see the benefit. You can see how awesome things can be as you're growing. Others may not see that yet. Once something feels in that way obvious to us, then we assume it should be obvious to everyone else around us. Think about your, let's think this, you're onboarding somebody new and you explain a process you have been doing for 5 years. You show it to them once, and then the next week they ask a question and you internally, you think, we literally just went over this. Yes, you went over it once. Did they take notes? I don't know. That seems to be a point of contention at times for trainees. Oh, I don't have to take notes. I remember it. But the point here, though, is you've done it hundreds of times. Those aren't the same experiences. Maybe you're leading through a change. Your leadership has been discussing it for 3 months. There have been meetings, emails, planning sessions, decision-making sessions, revisions. Then the announcement goes out to the organization, let's say Monday. By Tuesday, leaders are frustrated because people have questions. They should understand why we're doing this. Why? You've had 3 months to process it. They've had 24 hours. I said this would be hard. This is context. One of the questions inside Communiwhat is, what does the other person need to understand this correctly? Not what do I already know? Not what should they already know? It's what do they need? And that question forces me out of my comfort zone and out of my own perspective. I like to call this kind of the curse of knowledge. The curse of knowledge. There's a simple communication problem that happens when we know something so well that it becomes difficult to imagine what it is like not to know it. That sounds strange, Dana. Help me understand. We see this all the time. Experts do it, leaders do it, parents do it, teachers do it, spouses do it. We explain something using information that exists in our head, but never actually makes it into the conversation. And then we get frustrated when the other person doesn't connect the dots. But they never get the dots. They never get the order of the dots if they're word dots. That's why context matters. Context says, what happened before this? Why does this matter? What changes? And what does this affect? And most importantly, what information am I assuming that they already have? Sometimes the most important part of a message is not the instruction. It's the information surrounding that directive. So let's look at these 20%. That was a little harsh, Dana. Doesn't get any easier. I know what they meant. This one gets us more into intent. Someone says something and we hear the words, but then we assign a motive. They're trying to embarrass me. They're trying to be disrespectful. They were trying to go around me. They're questioning my leadership. Maybe. That's fair. Maybe not. The important word is maybe. We are often much more confident about other people's intent than the evidence would allow. And here's what makes that dangerous. Intent changes how I interpret everything else. If I believe you're trying to help me, I hear your question in a specific way. If I believe you're trying to undermine me, I hear that exact same question very differently. Imagine someone tells you, why did you decide to do it that way? That could be curiosity. I ask this question of my employees often. No ill will, it's simply curiosity. Could be clarification, it could be a criticism, but constructive. Could also be a challenge. Could also be learning. But if I've already decided that they're questioning my competence, I know exactly how I'm going to hear it. Now I'm defensive, not because of what they necessarily said, but because of what I decided they meant. So here's a simple practice for this specifically. Before assigning it intent, ask another question. Tell me more about what you mean. How about, what are you concerned about? And perhaps, what made you ask that? My favorite way to come at this, to understand intent without assuming intent. Help me understand what you're seeing. Those questions slow down the conversation, but that matters because assumptions move at the speed of light or the speed of thought. Curiosity slows those thoughts down. There's a tremendous difference between, I know why you did that, and help me understand why you did that. The first closes the conversation. No space. You know how I love my space. The second opens space in the conversation. 20% of you said their tone tells me everything. Now, we are moving into one of the most interesting parts of communication because tone absolutely matters. Last night, we talked about that on the Sith Dominion podcast about communication and how tone impacts everything. How we say something affects the people and how they receive it. We can't pretend that it does not. But tone is also incredibly easy to misinterpret, especially in text. I mean, how many arguments have started because of punctuation? You say, okay. They receive, okay, all caps. Oh, that's not what I meant to send. But why would I freak out if I didn't mean to send it in okay, all caps? Because that means you're screaming in text, right? Two different messages. Maybe someone says fine or sure. That word on its own has never caused a problem, but email makes it harder. Email, Teams, Slack, text. You got no face, you got no eyes, you got no voice, you got no body language. There's no immediate opportunity to see reaction. And so what do? We backfill the tone ourselves. And guess what determines the tone we hear? You, your mood, your relationship with the person, your expectations, and perhaps more than likely your previous experiences. And if I already believe that you are irritated with me, I can read irritation into a neutral message. So tone matters, but tone is information surrounding the message. Tone is not always proof, it's information. This is where control becomes extremely important because remember, control is where communication becomes leadership. If I hear a tone that bothers me, I got some choices. I do. I can react immediately, or I can get curious. Something feels off here. Are we okay? I may be reading this wrong, but help me understand what you meant by that. Can we talk instead of handling this through email? Those are control decisions. A control does not mean ignoring how something made you feel. It means putting some emotional intelligence into it and understand that your feeling does not automatically, should not automatically determine your response. That's the difference. The last 20%, they're doing it intentionally. Oof. I'm going to let that one sit for a minute. I know myself have felt this way many times. They're just trying to irritate me. They're trying to give me a dose of something that my boss gave to them, and now they got to take it out on me. Like, I know they're doing it intentionally, and it's powerful because once we decide, I'm, I'm sorry, Dana, what did you? Yeah, once you decide, once I decide that someone is doing something on purpose, almost everything starts to look like evidence to prove your point. They missed the deadline. Must mean they don't care. They didn't invite us to our meeting or to the meeting. That means that they're trying to leave us out. They didn't tell us about this change that's coming. They're keeping that information from us. Remember what I said earlier? Maybe, but there are many other explanations. They forgot. They assumed as well that someone else told you or that you were in on the CC line of an email. The meeting changed or the invite list was wrong. Maybe they were just overwhelmed. Could be that they even misunderstood the process. So the piece to get the information to you never happened. I'm not saying that people don't act intentionally in this way. Of course they do. We're human, we're people, and this happens. What I'm saying is that we need to know the difference between evidence and assumptions. Otherwise, I may walk into a conversation prepared to confront a specific motive that didn't even exist. And now I create the conflict through my response. This isn't an easy one today. We fill in gaps with our own experience, and this is something we're thinking about because when information is missing, we don't want that space to be empty. It's uncomfortable. Like the not knowing creates anxiety, angsty, as I like to say. But we fill it in. And what do we fill it in with? What we know, our experience, our history, our fears, our expectations, our previous interactions. This is why two people can experience the exact same situation and tell completely different stories about what happened. They're not necessarily lying, they're interpreting. And communication gets dangerous when we forget that interpretation is happening. Let's go with facts versus story. This is a practical tool that can help your communication. Use it. You ready? This is a good one. When you feel yourself getting frustrated about a communication issue, separate two things. What do I know? And what story am I telling myself? What does that look like? Let's start with that email example. What do I know? I emailed them Tuesday morning and they have not responded. What story am I telling myself? Well, I've worked myself up into thinking they just flat out don't respect me. Maybe, but maybe not. They're not the same thing. How about another example? What do I know? They asked 3 questions about my proposal in this meeting. What story am I going to try to tell myself? They're trying to undermine me. That's not the same thing. It's not. What do I know? My employees missed the project deadline. What story am I telling myself? I'm a complete and utter failure. The team doesn't care about our success. We've all been there. It happens, but it's not the same thing. The story may eventually prove accurate, but before you can act on that, again, maybe before you can act on it, you got to confirm it. And that's where confirmation enters this framework. Confirmation is usually something we talk about at the end of that conversation. Did they understand what I intended, right? Back to the front, intent. And that matters because instead of assuming, here is what I heard, is that what you meant? Let me make sure I understand. When you said this, I interpreted it this way. Am I reading that correctly? That's not weakness. That's discipline in communication. Because the goal is not to prove that your interpretation is right. The goal is just to understand and continue the connection. So what happens when we don't confirm? Well, here's how the breakdowns start compounding. Dana talks a lot about compounding. Someone does something. Here we go. I interpret it. I create a story. Now I react to this story. Now they respond to my reaction. They create a story about why I reacted in this way. And suddenly 2 people are fighting about interpretations. Neither one has actually confirmed. This is Communiwhat? 2 people communicating constantly, neither one actually communicating. And this is what inspired Communiwhat from the beginning. Let me give you another kind of workplace example for this. We're going to put it all together. Imagine you send something, let's say you send someone a request and it's Monday morning and you need it by Wednesday. Wednesday comes, nothing. Your first assumption might be they should already understand how important this is. Then they knew exactly when I needed it. Then you tell yourself, well, they must be ignoring it. And then you say, clearly, they're not respecting the deadline. And ultimately, not respecting me. Look how quickly that escalates. How long do you think that can take inside your own brain? I'll wait. Oh, you didn't need that long? No, because it happens so fast. due to our own fight or flight response and need for protection. Don't you see? There's all these other levels of psychology involved in this that we're not getting into today. But I want you to imagine instead of it going the way that we just walked through in our mind, let's look at it through the Communiwhat lens. Imagine instead you're adding the pause. Number one, intent. What am I trying to accomplish? I need the work completed. Context. Did I explain why Wednesday matters? No? Clarity. Did I actually give the specific deadline and expectation? Confirmation. Did you get a response to confirm that they understood and could meet the deadline? Control. Can I address the missed deadline without bringing all of my assumptions into the conversation? And that will lead to a very different opening of that conversation. Instead of, why did you ignore this? It's, I expected this by Wednesday and I don't have it yet. Walk me through what happened here. What? That wasn't, that was gentle in presentation, but it's also accountability and responsibility. And I gave this to you and help me understand what happened. I'm still holding them accountable. I'm still addressing the issue, but I'm not starting the conversation by being the prosecutor in a court with a made up story because you filled in gaps with assumptions. Now, time out. We don't always have all the information. We don't always have all the context. And so sometimes we need some assumptions to fill in gaps to keep us moving forward. Yes, true. Or as I've been saying in this show, maybe, maybe not. But the wrinkle here really is that not all assumptions are negative. Do we want to stay clear when we can? Absolutely. But not all of those assumptions are negative. Sometimes we assume things are fine. Oh, wait, what are you saying? Sometimes we make assumptions like, they'll ask me if they need help. They already know what I expect for success. They already know I appreciate them. Oh, they know I'm joking. You said any of this? They know this is urgent. They know I support them. They know I got their back. All of those things sound very positive, don't they? But they can create the exact same communication gaps. If it matters, communicate it. Do not make the other person responsible for reading into and figuring out the space that wasn't said. They should know. This is probably the biggest lesson from the poll. They should already understand. Maybe. But leadership is not about what they should know. It's about making sure they have what they need. That does not mean over explaining everything, micromanaging. It just means be intentional. Think about that difference. They should know versus, have I given enough context for them to know? That second question puts that responsibility right square back where it belongs, on you, the leader. Because you can actually do something about it. This connects directly to what we talked about last week. What are you protecting? Because the thing you are protecting often influences the story that you're creating. If I'm protecting my credibility, I may interpret your question as a challenge. If I'm protecting my relationship, I may interpret your silence as rejection. If I'm protecting my authority, I may interpret disagreement as flat out disrespect. If I'm protecting my comfort, I may interpret tension as proof that the conversation is going badly. So before you react to your interpretation, notice what is happening underneath it. What are you protecting? What story am I telling myself? What do I actually know? Now we're becoming intentional. So I got 3 questions to use this week. Really simple tool. Jot these down. Number 1, when communication starts to feel off, ask yourself these questions. Number 1, what do I actually know? What are the observable facts? No interpretation, no motive guessing, no storytelling, just facts. Number 2, now, what story am I telling myself? Start with the facts. Now, what have I added to those facts? They don't care. They're disrespecting me. They should know better. They're doing it on purpose. Name the story. Hold yourself accountable to that. And now what? Number 3, what do I need to confirm? What question could I ask before I react? That third question is where we get to improve communication. The first 2 are the setup. The first 2 are the mirror to let you see what's happening and where the responsibility lies for good communication. Curiosity gives us the information so we don't have to fill in the blanks with assumption. Assumptions, all they're going to give us are stories. So here's your challenge. The next time, for this week, the next time you catch yourself thinking, they should know, they know what I meant, they're doing it intentionally, or I can tell by their tone, just stop. Just stop for 1 second here, right? And write down, what do I know? Then, what am I assuming? Ask one question that helps you close that gap. That's it. One question. Because sometimes one good question can prevent an entire bad conversation. This week's poll was almost perfectly balanced except for one answer. 40% of you said they should already understand. So this is what I will leave you with this week. The other person cannot respond to information you never gave them. It's impossible for them to understand any context that may exist only in your brain. And you cannot accurately respond to intent you have never confirmed. So before you react to the story, confirm the facts, ask the questions, get curious. Because if you can provide context and create clarity, confirm understanding, what's the last one? Control your response, that conversation does not go the way you expected. Because communication breaks down quickly when assumptions start filling in the space where understanding should be. Whew. Yeah, that was a tough one today, but I appreciate you guys hanging on and listening and watching. Communicate with intention, create alignment, drive results, and always remember, be the example. You've been listening and watching Communiwhat Wednesday, a live podcast where we break down communication and try to fix it. So if this resonated with you, share it with someone who needs it. That's how we get better together. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss the next episode. And don't forget, every Friday I drop a poll to shape the next Communiwhat Wednesday podcast. Jump in, vote, let me know where communication is breaking down for you. You can always connect with me, find more resources, and work with me directly at my website, dmilm.com. And if you've got a thought, question, or a situation you want me to break down, drop it in the comments. I read them, I use them. I'm here for you. Communicate with intention, create alignment, and drive results. And always remember, be the example.